composing all this time, or was it, and not just recognised as such, or was it later on that he did try it?
Well, in point of fact, he was composing contemporaneously with him, in fact, singing, and he also was doing a bit of conducting on the side, because after he left Paris, he went to Italy and was in sing a Rossini role in his opera Mose in Egitto. He was engaged to sing the role of the Pharaoh, and it's rather bizarre, really, that when he arrived in Pavia, there was a problem with the conductor. So instead of singing the role of the Pharaoh, he ended up conducting the piece.
He was a versatile man, wasn't he?
Very, very, very versatile. In addition, he also wrote insert pieces for other composers' operas at the time, which was kind of par for the course in those days. I mean, remember when he started? He started in his first, if you like, major operatic success would have been the Siege of Rochelle in 1835, right. Which was written in English for Theatre Royal in Drury Lane. Between it and 1865, which is kind of a period of around 30 years, he produced the main body of his work.
Okay. All right, look, we're going to hear a piece now. So what is this piece that we're going to hear?
It's from the Rosa Castile, which was premiered in 1857, and it's from a relatively new recording by Jerry Hadley, and the aria is called "'Twas Rank and Fame That Tempted Thee."
Right, that was Jerry Hadley there with the Rose of Castile. Paddy Brennan, you enjoyed that, didn't you?
It's beautiful, Mike. It's a gorgeous melody. And in terms of that recording, when Jerry Hadley and Richard Bonynge, who was the conductor there, got together to make this particular CD, of all the pieces that were available to them, and the CD is called The Age of Bel Canto, there are, I think, 15 items on the CD, and 2 of them are written by Micheal William Balfe.
Not bad.
That I think tells what Richard Bonynge and Hadley think of Balfe and Balfe's place. And as you hear, it's a gorgeous melody.
Well, as you mentioned there before we heard it, he wrote in French and Italian as well. But what's the difference between the English school of opera and the French and Italian? Is there a big difference?
In reality, at the time, when Balfe was writing English opera as such, he was one of the founding fathers trying to develop a school of English opera, and it failed for a whole complex of reasons, not least of which the most famous singers of the day weren't prepared to put themselves through the hoops to learn English opera, which was the most attractive thing at the time. Balfe, in a sense, at that time, was the only one who did, in fact, persuade people to sing in his operas in English. Of course, he also had them translated into Italian and in French.
Well, why is it that, I suppose, the uninitiated like myself feel that English opera is very polite and uninteresting as compared to the rousing Italian opera, particularly?
Well, is it a question of language? Does the language as in terms of the words that are using, or is it the musical language?
The music seems to me not to be as rousing or as full-blooded.
Well, part of our problem with people like Mr. Balfe is all that we have to go on, in a sense, is the recording RTE made 5 years ago of The Bohemian Girl, the snippet we heard there from the Rosa Castile, Sumi Joe, an aria from Le Puy d'Amour, And there is very little else of Mr. Balfe in if you like,
Yeah.
the public domain.
That's right.
And to me, that is the real tragedy.
But there is so little.
There is so little of him available.
You know, also, he wrote a number of ballads as well. We're going to hear one of them now, didn't he? But there are ballads that people, even today, know the names of, and even some of the tunes.
Of course. I mean, John McCormack, one of his first successes was a piece called Killarney. And then the piece that we're going to hear now, Come Into the Garden Mud, was also another piece recorded by John McCormack. The words were by Alfred Lord Tennyson.
Yeah.
And on this recording, we're going to hear the Welsh school teacher, Stuart Burrows.
Night has flown, come into the garden mud. I am here at the gate alone. I am here at the gate alone. And the woodbine spices are wafted abroad, and the musk of the roses blown. For a breeze of morning moves, and the planet of love is on high, beginning to faint in the light that she loves on a bed of daffodil sky. To faint in the light of the sun she loves, to faint in the light and to die.
Right, Stuart Burrows there, and Come Into the Garden Maud. But of course, Come Into the Garden Maud, and the other one, what did you mention, Killarney, you talked about before that,
Yes.
ones that were written by Balfe, they were the pop songs of their day, and that's really how he made his money from the sheet music.
Which way
These
you
kind of songs, wasn't it?
going,
Indeed, Mike. I mean, his most famous piece, of course, is the Dreamt of Wealth, and it's on record that Balfe made a considerable sum of money out of the Bohemian Girl himself, but the real winner was the publisher, because I Dreamt I Dwelt sold within 1 year some 80,000 copies.
Did it?
Yes, because remember, at the time, in the Victorian milieu, so to speak, you had the soirees in the houses, in the country houses, and everybody learned music.
And they needed the sheet music for that.
Yes, and one of the interesting things about Balfe's music is it's deceptively simple. And so it was able to be sung by, if you like, reasonably competent amateurs, as well as then the top-class singers were able to bring another dimension
Well,
to
is
it.
that one of the problems that Balfe has faced in terms of his posterity, that his music seems to be simple, and there are some critics who would say that his music was even trivial?
Well, he was an uncomplicated chap. I mean, he just wrote lovely melodies. And as the century progressed, people looked for more in music, looked for more complex harmonies, rhythms, what have you. He didn't provide that. What he did was he provided glorious melodies. I mean, Johann Strauss, the elder, referred to him as the king of melody when he went to Vienna to premiere the Bohemian Girl.
How was he on words, by the way? Was he good at composing the words, or was it melody was a strong point?
No, melody. He didn't write the words.
No.
The words were provided by different people, different librettists.
Okay. And then when he found a good tune, would he, like in the Bohemian Girl or whatever opera it was, would he repeat it over and over so that it would get into the consciousness of the audience and they would buy the sheet music?
Well, it depended really. I mean, like in the Bohemian Girl, you have a number of themes running through it, and you hear snippets at different stages. Probably the most obvious one is the chorus, the gypsy chorus, which recurs practically every 10 minutes through the piece. But no, I mean, it was, again, in the convention of the time, you had the standard ballad for the different characters within the piece, and he wrote accordingly.
You reckon it's time to revive the Bohemian Girl?
Oh, more than. It has never really. In fact, it's the only work of his that has never, as it were, disappeared totally, totally from fashion.
It'll do well in the National Concert Hall over the weekend.
Hopefully.
Where does he stand, by the way? If you're going to put him in the whole pantheon of operatic composers, where would you put Balfe?
I prefer to look on it another way, in the sense that I believe his music is timeless, and I believe his time will come again.
All right, Paddy, thank you very much. We'll end with a small clip of I Dreamt I Dwelt in Marble Halls with Joan Sutherland. So the Bohemian Girl is in the National Concert Hall next Saturday and Sunday, and Paddy Brennan of the DGOS, thank you very much.
I
But that brings us to the end of the Arts Show for today. Join us again tomorrow on the Arts Show at 2:45. Until then, from all of us here, goodbye.
The Art Show is presented by Mike Murphy and produced by Anne Walsh.